So it's been about a month since Mixtape released, and the game is still as divisive as ever. For those of you who watch all of my content, I lightly covered this in a YouTube short where I asked the question, well, what counts as an indie game? But I didn't dwell on Mixtape too much, and the reason for that being that, well, I haven't played it. And while I have commented on my first impressions of games I haven't played, I don't really go too in-depth because I like to give everything a fair chance. And today I'll be doing that with Mixtape. This will be somewhat similar to my video on Poppy Playtime, where you guys will get to see all of my first impressions and thoughts and dissections as I go through the game. Because without going into it in bad faith, I'd like to answer the question, well, is it worth your time? But before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and consider checking out our Patreon if you want to support the channel. We've got a community Discord and a lot of really cool perks, including a fully illustrated portrait of yourself at the end of every video. The team and I are really grateful for the support you guys have shown us, and if you want to help support the channel, that's really the best way to do it. Thank you guys so much. Do y'all ever feel stuck at your computer just to play a game? Well, I've been testing out this app recently that lets you play games like Mixtape from your phone. It's called Stardesk, and not only does it run as smooth as butter, it's loaded with customization options, like controller overlays and FPS settings and resolution settings. And to top it all off, it's entirely free. And you can connect from any device, so not just an iPhone, but an Android or a laptop or a Mac. And setting it up is really straightforward. Download Stardesk on your gaming computer and whatever device you want to connect to it on. Log into the same Google account on both devices, and in literally one click, connect to your computer and start gaming. So if you're interested in having access to your entire PC games library from literally anywhere at the cost of $0, download Stardesk from the link in the description or the pinned comment. Thanks, guys. Anywho, I've heard a lot of different stuff about this game, and most of it has been negative, but there's a part of me that wonders whether or not all that talk is just Twitter being Twitter, because, you know, that website is infamously negative and bad faith a lot of the time, and I've been on the receiving end of that even. But I will say, it's a little funny how when you go on the Steam page and you look at the tags for the game, you know, the thing that's meant to get you interested in buying it is walking simulator. Isn't that like anti-marketing? I don't know. I've never heard anybody tell me that their favorite genre is walking simulator. Again, I'm gonna try to go into this with an open mind and see if I can find anything positive about it, but geez, someone's gotta do something about that, because there's no way that has convinced anybody to buy this game. I feel like you'd be hard-pressed to find a guy out in the street that rubs his hands together seeing the walking simulator tag on Steam. Another thing that I've heard is that this game kind of lacks gameplay, and I guess we'll see how true that is in just a moment. But you guys know me. I love a good story, and I love dissecting narratives down to itty-bitty pieces. So for those of you who are literate, this video will also be talking about whether or not the story saves this game. But yeah, let's not waste any more time and get down to business. Okay, before we begin, I will say one thing. Anytime it cuts to the clips of my gameplay here, you're not gonna hear the in-game audio. And that is for one reason in particular. This game is pretty much all licensed music, and it doesn't have a streamer mode. Yeah, the game's director said something along the lines of it removing the soul of the game or something, which on paper sounds kind of stupid, but with where I'm at in the game as of recording this, I mean, I can kind of understand. The entirety of the game's story revolves around the main protagonist's mixtape. Yeah, real subtle. And so removing the licensed songs out of the game kind of defeats the whole point, I guess. Like, pretty much all of her dialogue makes no sense. Speaking of main protagonist, this is Stacy Rockford. What's her deal? She loves music. And I mean, she loves music. She does this thing where every time a new song starts playing, she turns to the camera and just tells you who made it and what year it came out and how she feels about it, which is kind of fun at first, and then she does it again and again and again. I don't mean to start complaining already, but God, it got to the point where I just kind of pinched the bridge of my nose every time, because I'm like, please, I just want to get back to the game. That being said, if you do want to hear my commentary with the music, I guess, that'll all be up on my Patreon. I know, second plug this video, but that's where you can find it. The opening sequence also introduces us to Van Slater and Cassandra Marino as the three skate down a hill, and honestly, this opening segment really impressed me, at least visually. The art does look really good. I will say, with the way the characters are animated, I can kind of see the Spider-Verse inspiration, which on paper sounds kind of cool, but when you're actually controlling her, it just kind of looks a little weird. Hell, even the NPCs when they move around is just kind of, I don't know. Looks far more natural in the cutscenes. I kind of felt the same way about the Spider-Verse costumes in the Insomniac games, so that's not necessarily unique to Mixtape, as much as it is a personal gripe. The thing that didn't really impress me about this opening segment, though, is just kind of how inconsequential your inputs are. Whether you choose to do tricks, or boost yourself forward, or hell, even run into a car, it all really doesn't matter. You can't die here. No matter what, you're gonna be at the same pace alongside Van and Cass. And it almost gave me the feeling that I could really just set my controller down on the table and do nothing and be absolutely fine. Now granted, it was visually satisfying to do a little trick every now and again, can, but how much does that really matter if the game itself isn't actually doing anything to make that worthwhile, besides just sitting and looking pretty? All I was hoping at this point was that the rest of the game wouldn't be more of the same. Pulling into the cul-de-sac where the main characters live, we find out that it was basically a super bad thing going on with these characters. They will be attending Camille Cole's party, and of course, they want to bring booze. And so, of course, our next steps will be to find the booze and get to the party. However, there's one thing sullying this experience for the others. This is Stacy's last night in town, as she has a flight to New York to go see Bella Del Tone, the greatest music supervisor in the world. She hopes to hand Bella her mixtape and become her protege, successfully fulfilling her career goals, much to the dismay of her friends. Strangely enough, I honestly don't know whether or not this game is gonna go the direction of her leaving the town behind or giving it up and staying in her childhood town. Guess we'll just have to wait and see. Exploring the upstairs part of her house, there's one thing that stuck out to me instantly. These sections of the game meander on for way too long, and it's for one reason and one reason only. Stacy walks so fucking slowly. I think what bothers me the most about it is that she's just slow enough to where you feel like you should be able to go faster, but you just can't. There's no way. In the grand scheme of things, it's so minor, but God, did it annoy me. I could feel it every time. Now, throughout this game, we will be looking at the various fond memories of the main cast before, of course, Stacy leaves for good. And this game made sure to give me a lovely, wonderful first impression of said memories. I'll let the clip speak for itself. What the fuck am I? What in the Sam Hill? Dude, come on. You can see his fucking braces and shit. What am I playing? How do I get out of this? That's enough is right. Oh my God. I just couldn't believe it. What was even the point? But anyway, we spent about 10 years walking to the other end of the room, and we find out that Stacy really hates this Jenny Goodspeed girl for some reason, and I'll come back to that later, before we enter our next memory. And this is just where it really settled in for me that no matter what I do, it just doesn't matter. Like, yeah, cute segment and everything, but look at this. Really? I can just do this as much as I want. Does it not even matter? It doesn't even matter. I can do this as much as I want. This game is f***ing ridiculous. Why can I do this? Oh my God! I think I mentioned earlier how I didn't want the rest of the game to be more of the same, and man, this just kind of proved that it really will be, and I don't know. By this point I understood that maybe the point of this game is to be more of a narrative-based experience. But I don't think it's wild to expect a video game to be more game than video. You know what I mean? It just really feels like whenever you're prompted to do anything with your controller, it's out of necessity. Like the developers just remember that they have to make you do something with the controller. And so nothing you do when you interact with the game is meaningful. Like this next part, where we're racing down the street in the shopping cart. There's next to no challenge here. And while I understand what they're trying to do, at least I think I do, I can't help but feel like there's no point to this being a video game right now. I don't see how this story benefits from being a video game in any way. And to make matters worse, and I really hope this changes as I go along through the game, I like Cass. I like Slater. I do not care for Stacy Rockford, but put a pin in that because I'll elaborate on why in just a second. There's a memory here where they're making slushy combinations. You know, it's more of the same. It doesn't impact anything about the following interaction they have at all, which is with Jenny Goodspeed, by the way. Remember how I said that Stacy hates her? Well, Jenny doesn't really like music all that much, and that immediately prompts Stacy to be a total hater. I mean, I guess she was a little passive-aggressive, but I don't know. Stacy just seemed really unlikable in this scene. Am I crazy for that? I don't know. Stacy and later, then talk a bit about what they were doing before they met Cass. And this little memory of them in the photo booth is honestly pretty charming. I think this is a good way of endearing me towards the characters. I don't know if these photos are gonna show up again later on, but I did appreciate how, I guess in some way, I was rewarded for the input I put into the game, instead of it just kind of forgetting all about anything I had ever done the second it moved on to the animated cutscene. But yeah, I thought this was kind of cute, especially because we see all the little pictures and stuff of them growing up together afterwards. Oh yeah, I forgot to to mention, at this point we're in Stacy's sister Debbie's room, still looking for booze. She left like a Fortnite chest in her closet with hints as to where to find the alcohol, and we're sent into another memory, which was another really visually impressive and honestly pretty nice segment of the game. Like, granted, it is another glorified interactive cutscene, but that's kind of this entire game at this point, so I can't be too mad anymore, otherwise I'll just be complaining about the same thing over and over again the whole video. But what I will say is that narratively it is a little exhausting to be going back and forward in time again and again and again, especially when the memories themselves are not even in chronological order. Add on the fact that however long it takes you to get through each memory is completely up in the air, and you've got a recipe for just like a jigsaw puzzle of story-based WarioWare games if they took 10 years each. That's probably a weird way of describing it, but jeez. But yeah, a while back Debbie had given them the cord, and it's this kind of cool cabin out in the woods that they keep a secret amongst themselves. Our main characters finally leave Stacy's house en route to Cass's, and we get a memory of them skipping rocks together or whatever. And I guess you could say this is genuinely just a fun minigame. I kind of wish more of them were like this, where there was a clear win-lose condition, so to speak. Like, could you imagine if in the car you actually did have to press the buttons on beat instead of just being able to mindlessly mash the whole time? I know I just called these WarioWare games in a negative sense, but that could have been a good thing if it was just executed differently. But now we're at Cass's house, and wouldn't you know it, the second the focus comes off of Stacy, I start to have a little more fun with the game. Oh boy. So coming into Cass's house, we find that her life is meticulously controlled by her parents, especially her incredibly overbearing cop father. Her entire life, Cass has been expected to fulfill all of her parents' goals for her, which is clear from the way her room absolutely does not match her low-key and sarcastic nature, as well as a massive collection of accolades and trophies, with one of these taking us to another memory. And oh my god, there's gameplay! Yes, Cass, you're my favorite character, thank you so much. A small thing that I thought was a neat detail in this memory is the way that it's incredibly difficult to control Stacy with the bat, but as soon as you switch over to Cass, it's light work. Well, unless you're me. I sucked. Until, I didn't. See, I'm not so bad. Check it out. Oh my god. There you go. Now, listen, I know this character archetype has been seen 1,000,001 times, but in the context of this game and this story, Cass, at least to me, manages to be pretty endearing. It feels like her motivation to rebel fits well within the, upper middle class suburban America setting the game takes on. And however cliche you feel it may be, her story is still sympathetic enough to where her acts of rebellion don't feel contrived. And I really wish I could say the same for the main character. From the moment we are introduced to her, she is like textbook protagonist with a perpetual DreamWorks smirk. Her dad has like 2 lines when she walks in the door, and the guy is comically normal. And yet she never stops talking about how metal she is. Now it'd be different if this were played up for a gag, but the game is constantly bringing the story to a screeching halt so she can wink into the camera and remind you of how 90s this game is. Even Slater, who truthfully is not contributing very much to the game's emotional beats right now, ends up feeling like a far more genuine character because he is just allowed to exist. And I think that's what makes me not care for Stacy in particular. Her dialogue feels incredibly manufactured. Like, remember that sequence I was talking about earlier, where they were running through the fields and everything? The main cast are talking about motorcycles, and Stacy, being the contrarian she is across this entire game, makes the argument that whereas politicians and concerts earn their right to loudness, motorcycles buy that right, and therefore they're lame. The thing is, I was immediately taken out of my immersion by just how preachy this felt. Like, wow, man, that girl did not stutter. And this is far from the only ham-fisted gospel she filibusters down your gullet either. Contrasted with the other 2 characters, she feels less like a person and more like a mouthpiece for the nostalgia of the game's developers, and a Disney fast pass to the 10 out of 10s the nostalgic millennial game reviewers dished out to this game across the board. But if you want my Spring Chicken 2007 baby opinion, if you have to constantly remind me that your main character is the epitome of 90s rebellion, maybe you didn't do a good enough job of writing her to be that way to begin with. Anyways, the next section is of them TPing this teacher's house, and yeah, it was also very fun. The guy's voice is pretty funny, Stacy Rockford, I don't know why he sounds like that. Now, it's at this point that I kind of realized that I'm talking in circles over and over again, because the story is not advancing and the memories are not being shown to us in a way that's relevant to what's going on in the present at all, because nothing's going on in the present. None of these memories have anything to do with one another, and I don't feel like the reminisce on your good childhood good thing is doing the story any favors anymore. The next memory is of Stacy being super sad because she asked Cass if she could hang out, and Cass said no. And then she found out that Cass was hanging out with Jenny Goodspeed. But it's not shown to us at a moment that's relevant to what's going on in the present, because there's nothing going on in the present. And yet this segment goes on for so goddamn long that you'd imagine it'd be placed at a point in time that's incredibly relevant, but it's just not. So if you don't mind, I'm just gonna talk about what actually happens in the story now, okay? I'm gonna stop dwelling so much on the memories. We spend a really long time reminiscing on a time they broke into a Jurassic Park amusement place, I guess. And after this, Cass's dad breaks in the room and he's like, you know, you're not allowed to go to that party or whatever, and the voiceover. I don't like to dunk on voice actors normally, but geez, man. This dad character, I don't know why he sounded like that. Stacy and Slater find the booze at that cabin I told you about, but then Cass shows up with Jenny Goodspeed, who Stacy still doesn't have a good reason not to like, but then Stacy gets mad and they have a whole fight about it. It's just something out of a Pixar movie, except it doesn't make sense. Cass just reads as completely unlikable here. What did Jenny Goodspeed do wrong besides just exist? It's like, sure, you can have a flawed main protagonist, but God, at least make it make sense. They go back to Slater's house and Stacy feels really bad, but then Cass's cop dad shows up again and they find out that big party from the beginning of the story was broken up. Stacy also hears that he's going to the convenience store where Cass and Jenny Goodspeed went to go get their booze. She races down the street at top speed to go save them. They end up meeting Camille Cole and all her friends because their party got broken up by the police, and they decide to bring them all to that secret cabin of theirs. At this point, I'm just thinking, okay, what was the point of the last 10 minutes of the game, you know what I mean? Stacy and Cass barely spent any time upset with one another, and then becoming friends again wasn't a big deal either. But anyways, the party's chill until they accidentally send a firework off and the whole shack lights up on fire. But then Cass stands up to her dad and she's like, I did it. I'm gonna rebel again and again and again because you keep your thumb over my life. Screw you, Dad, I guess. Now, as they come home, I do think they pulled off the goodbye scene pretty well. Like, this felt realistic. Even Stacy's dialogue, like she's finally not being a DreamWorks protagonist. And Stacy letting go of Slater, honestly, did make me feel bad. I mean, this guy hasn't done too much, but he's a chill dude, you know what I mean? And I like that about him. They're not trying too hard with this guy. But yeah, Stacy turns around and the credits roll. We don't get to see her in New York or anything like that, and I think that was on purpose. But honestly, I'm glad they went in the direction of letting her move on from this place. It's a good message. Now, I'm sorry I seemed like I was getting really fed up there, but I'm sure you can imagine why. This game was very much not what I expected it to be. And maybe that was my naivete, but I kind of was expecting there to be a lot more substance to the actual game side of the video game. And while there were fun segments like the Cass part of the game, the rest of it just really felt like one long cutscene where I guess you could press buttons sometimes. I know I glossed over it earlier, but that Dino Park bit of the game was just so boring. It's walking around and taking pictures in really dimly lit areas, and God, speaking of the pictures, those didn't come back at all. Wow. So I guess if the question is if it's worth your time, then I don't know. Would you pay 25 Canadian dollars to own an animated film digitally? Because you really can beat this in 3 hours if you manage to stick it out. Now, there is another thing people have a problem with this game, and it's just behind its development. However, there is a little bit of misinformation around it. Some misinformation that I've even fell for. Like, for example, a lot of people like to say that Mixtape was developed by some billionaire nepo baby, and while this does stem from a truth, it's not as egregious as people make it out to be. The game's publisher was founded by the daughter of one of the richest people on the planet, not necessarily the studio who developed Mixtape. And they've published a bunch of other games too, like Stray and Outer Wilds, so this affiliation isn't necessarily unique to Mixtape. However, it is very clear that they did receive far more funding. Like all the licensed music in this game, yeah, they've got a perpetual license, like a permanent one. Not even GTA has that. Like, that's insane. That and all the journalists that received this game received like extra care packages and shit that were just undisclosed that definitely contributed to the score, right? Because this game was receiving 10 after 10 after 10, but then you play it and there's like next to no game. So what's up with that? Will every walking simulator with a quote-unquote good story be treated this way? And it really has kind of spun on the debate of what exactly makes an indie game. And that's where the biggest bit of controversy comes from. Mixtape, really, truthfully, in my honest opinion, is not indie. At least not from a cultural perspective, among us who play games. Or sorry, gamers. I said this in my YouTube short, but it's really not just the money on its own. Like Friday Night Funkin', for example, that game's banking off a $2 million Kickstarter, and nobody's calling into question whether or not that's an indie game. But the real difference is that that was accomplished by everyday people, funded by everyday people, inspires everyday people. Mixtape has banked so hard on the industry that I feel it is only independent on a technicality, and in no way contributes to the actual indie game scene at all. Does it lack gameplay? Yes. Does the story save it? Kind of. In some respects. Did it need a streamer mode? Probably not. And this is probably gonna be my worst received take in this video. But again, we talk about the vision of the artist a lot, but here's the one thing you gotta understand about this game. It is appealing to a demographic that I'd argue would not give a shit about this game if not for the music. It's old school track after old school track that your dad would shit bricks over as the main character looks into the camera and reminds you of the good old days. So much so to the point where she feels one note. Whereas Cassie gets to be a cliche but still endearing character, and Slater just gets to be Slater. There's a few things about this game that I think would need to change for me to get enjoyment out of it. The memories are clearly here to function as a means of speedrunning your emotional attachment to the characters. And yet the order in which they're shown to you is almost inconsequential because they have nothing to do with what's going on at all, because nothing goes on until the last act of the game. So it becomes nauseating to be jumping back into the past and be spending 10-15 minutes in the past just to spend 2 minutes in the present where nothing happens just to do it all over again. If you go back and watch a movie like Superbad, a movie I referenced earlier, there's constantly shit happening that advances your understanding of the characters, that moves the plot forward. The memories gimmick is cute, it lets you have a bunch of different mini games. But in a real game, these would not be the primary levels where you actually put input in between a series of cutscenes. And that's the other thing that would have to change. And I've said this many times already, but oh my god, it is criminal how insignificant your input is to most of the game. Having a game be mostly dialogue is not a bad thing. I've played a lot of visual novels. The problem with this game is that it jingles keys in front of your face, dangling the idea of a game right in front of you, just for it all to be ultimately meaningless. It's like being a little kid and your older brother hands you a controller to play with him, but it's not plugged in. And look, I'm not an 80s kid or a 90s kid, so I'm not gonna argue about how accurate it is to the era, but all these things combined make me think that this is more just a huge trip for nostalgia junkies that's honestly better played high. And overall, like a lot of content we discuss on this channel, probably needed more time in the oven. That's all for today. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I'd also like to take a quick moment to thank our patrons, including Roscoe13, Titleski, R.S. Newton,
Cyberpixel,
The Sparkling Diamond,
And as always, Serenity Solstice, the drink of doom. Through thick and thin, you have fought diligently for the Brazy Empire, and as it continues to grow, you will live on in our Hall of Fame.
This game really doesn't fit my MO, and by the time I realized that, it was kinda too late, but I hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts on this game anyway. Let me know if there's any other games you want me to cover in the comments, and be sure to stick around on the channel for live streams. We're gonna be playing through Deltarune again soon, so yeah, this should be fun. Anywho, this has been ronbrazy, and I'll be seeing you all next time. Catch you later, y'all.